abounds. Therefore the law is paralyzed and justice never prevails. The wicked hemming the righteous so that justice is perverted. Habakkuk is voicing his lament. And you can see it in that question, how long? How long, Lord, will this continue on? Once upon a time, there was a story called state capture. See, and some people began to make a question, how long would we leave our state in captivity? And lo and behold, the Zondo Commission came in, and the findings of the Zondo Commission have been out, and you don't seem to see much that has changed. Then we could probably ask the same question, how long, Lord? Habakkuk's situation, you notice that the Torah was not even being practiced. The law is known, the goodness of God is known, but the people who know the truth are not practicing it. Judah was rebelling against God as it were. Now we have the first answer of God, and the first answer of God is to say, the Babylonians will judge Judah. Now these are wicked people. Verses 5 to 11, God says he's going to use the Babylonians. Just listen to what it says. Look at the nations, watch and be utterly amazed. For I'm going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told, Habakkuk. I'm raising up the Babylonians, that ruthless and impetuous people who sweep across the whole earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are a feared and dreaded people. They are a law to themselves and promote their own owner. Their horses are swifter than the leopards, fiercer than the wolves at dusk. The cavalry gallops headlong. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle swooping to devour. They all come intent on violence. Their hordes advance like a desert wind and gather prisoners like sand. They mock kings and scoff at rulers. They laugh at all fortified cities. By building earthen rams, they capture them. Then they sweep past like the wind and go on. Guilty people whose own strength is their God. What a description of the Babylonians. The only problem with this response from God is that Habakkuk was expecting God to do not what he did. He says, these guys are sending are more wicked than the wickedness I'm complaining about. So why would a God use people who are even more wicked to punish them if there's anything called the less wicked? The second protest, that's the one that I've just mentioned. How can a righteous God use the wicked to punish those more righteous? We see that in verses 12 to 17. And this lament turns to a petition, and Habakkuk appeals to God's character. God, you're righteous, you're good. You can't do this. You can't do this. The oppression by the Babylonians brings disorder, a disorder to Habakkuk's thinking. Have you been in a space where you think God doesn't know what he's doing? Because the answers that you expect to come through are not coming through. And the conclusion you make is, perhaps God doesn't know what he's doing. But God knows what he's doing. And whenever he does something, he always does the right thing. From a human vantage point, we would think, oh, these guys are more wicked than us. Why would he use them? One of the things that will happen in our lives as we serve the Lord is to see life from a perspective of a helper. As you see people are suffering coming, we counsel them and we help them to get solutions for their lives. But eventually one day, something happens in your own life. You compare it with what you've been doing to help others. And you are actually thinking, surely God must have seen how I helped the other one. But why can't he help me? I've said it before here that sometimes when I pray for people, I get immediate answers. Okay? Just pray and solutions come. But when I pray about the same thing for myself, there's an element of a time of waiting. Sometimes it doesn't even happen the way I hope it would. I was praying it happens. And I've always said to myself, God's ways are beyond our understanding. I got a friend who was a strong marriage counselor, and his church produced a lot of strong Christian couples who are still following the Lord and running successful Christian homes. But his own son secretly got addicted to alcohol and became a very rebellious child. The father, a very godly person. The son, a rebellious child. And he began to question himself and say, if I cannot handle my own son, how fit am I for ministry? And somehow some of the guys whom that he had processed through life came back and I said, hey Pops, you can't be thinking like that. Can you see that you raised us? And your own son, of course, has gone that way. You shouldn't worry about it. Because we potentially could have just been like him. Don't put it on yourself. Or if you would like, allow us to reach out to him. Of course, my friend is still in ministry today. And his son has found his feet. His son has got 2 kids. And each of those kids are firstborns. You know what that means?
Twins.
They're not twins.
Firstborn son, firstborn daughter.
Oh.
Maybe.
Both are firstborns in their mothers.
Oh, I see.
So you get the point, eh?
Yeah.
So it shows that it's
Different words, different women.
Yeah, different women.
That's ambiguous, eh?
It's like having all the 5 kids are firstborns, but one father.
Old Testament.
Yeah, that's what.
He only read the first part of the Bible.
But of course, the young man got his act together and went back to his father and said, look, let me find my feet again. And counseled through the sound counsel, and he got married again. This time in a dignified and God-honoring way, and he's honoring his vows today. We don't know how God works, but he works nonetheless. Sometimes we even use the things we think are not going to help us at all. Or you'll be surprised at the people that God will bring to you. I've told you a story that once upon a time, I lost a scholarship and I began supporting myself in the whole city of Cape Town with no one to support me amongst the church. Okay. Now you know that it's difficult to begin looking for support if you're looking for it from zilch. And the man who began supporting me, in fact, the man who paid for my PhD funding, was a very unlikely candidate to do that because he himself was not a believer. But something happened that I began working for him as a personal assistant. And on a day that I asked for leave to go and graduate with my master's degree, he gave me leave, and he was happy to have me back that Monday from graduation, from camping from Pretoria. And he asked me, were there any pictures gotten? And I showed him the pictures. Oh, and he says, no, these are such nice pictures. And the next thing I see, he frames them professionally. And then he says to me, look, I don't have a master's degree myself. I've got a bachelor's degree from UCT. And you know for a fact that I'm richer than you.
It's nice.
So I'm thinking, where is this going now? And he's a Boer man, Afrikaner man. Where is this going? Then he says to me, but look, my younger brother is a botanist. He's got a PhD in botany. And he told me that when you do your master's, it's wasted effort if you don't go to your PhD, because your master's is like a practice match. It's like you're going for practice all the time, and when the final game comes, you're on the bench. Very frustrating. So he says, but Kennedy, why can't you do your PhD? I know you're a pastor, but you can do your PhD. And I said to him, no, I want to take risks. He says, no, I know what you're saying. You're saying you don't have money. And I was saying, where is this going? Where is this going? And then he says, look, if you go and register for a PhD, I'll pay for it. And I said, okay, where does this kindness come from? He says, no, because of what you do for me, and how we relate. Now, as a casual employee, a personal assistant to an MD of a company, take care of his filing, take care of his appointments, edit some of his project proposals, and help him remember some things he had forgotten. So my job was to talk to him, greet him, talk to him, remind him about stuff, and the Lord gave me favor that whatever he talked about, and if he lost it, and I got it through, I found it for him. So he was very impressed, because he began to flourish again, getting new contracts, new tenders of stuff, because I worked with him. And then he says, okay, so I said to him, I'm going to register, and I registered, and I gave him the bill. Here's the bill. He paid for my PhD studies. I continued studying. When friends asked me and said, what are you doing from my home country? I said, I'm studying. Who is paying for your studies? I said, you won't believe it. And who is paying for it? I said, my friend, my boss is paying for it. You must be working for a very big boss. I said, yes, God is my big boss. God is my big boss. So it worked. Now we're looking at Habakkuk's situations where we see the prophet protesting, but God are giving an answer that Habakkuk doesn't like at all. The second answer of Yahweh is also interesting. Part one, he says, of course, that one of the great messages of the Old Testament is that God is told to, Habakkuk is told to wait. Don't hurry, wait. The nation of person that lives a life that is not honest, upright, and just shall fail. But the righteous remnant will be preserved. And so God says to him, wait and see what I'll do. And it's in that context, in chapter 2, that we get those life-altering words, the righteous shall live by faith. The righteous shall live by faith. In chapter 2, the Lord replied, write down the revelation. Write down the vision, as the King James put it. But at the end of that statement, in verse 4, it says, see, the enemy is puffed up, his desires are not upright, but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness. And I think so one of you wrote a paper on that as an OT passage used in the New Testament. places where that is used. Can you remember? Romans and Galatians. The righteous shall live by faith. Right. So the second answer of Yahweh, which is part 2, is a series of 5 woes or condemnations or lamentations, I'll put them, which is a taunting song against Babylon. That Babylon is great, but Babylon will fall. And here the focus is on the oppression of nations by a more powerful nation where the actions of violence and bloodshed are highlighted. And in the midst of those oracles of judgment, there is a vision of the time in the future when the earth will be filled with the knowledge of God, or the glory of God. So Habakkuk at least gets a glimpse to say, although it is like this, it's so oppressive times, wicked times, there's coming a time when God's knowledge will be known everywhere, and the glory of God will be filled everywhere. Now don't we get some glimpses of that? Jesus has spoken about the coming day when righteousness will reign. And at least John the Revelator, has pointed to an era which is called the millennium in Revelation 20. I don't know where you stand with that. But the point is, there's coming a day when there will be righteousness everywhere. Wickedness will be replaced by righteousness. And that's all the work of God. So, Habakkuk now gets the message firsthand that although God is using the Babylonians, even the Babylonians will be out, they'll be judged, and God's ways are going to prevail ultimately. And during this explanation, there is also the explanation of the foolishness of idolatry, which is addressed. And this section closes with a contrast between futile worship and a call by God to reverence the presence of the true God. Okay. Now, here is now Habakkuk's response. It's a psalm of praise. Have you thought about something that one passage of scripture that comes from Habakkuk? The two, in fact, each time Habakkuk is mentioned by people, I always expect them to preach from one of these two texts. One is, the righteous shall live by faith. The other one is in this song. Let's read it, and we'll see what the song would say. Lord, I've heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds. Repeat them in our day, in our time, make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens, and his praise filled the earth. His splendor was like the sunrise, rays flashed from his hand, where his power was hidden. Plague went before him, pestilence followed his steps. He stood and shook the earth. He looked and made the nations tremble. The ancient mountains trembled and the age-old hills collapsed, but he marches on forever. I saw the tents of Cushan in distress and the dwellings of Midian in anguish. We can explain all that, but the verse I want us to jump to is verse 17 there. Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the sheepfold, and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. That's how I came to know about Habakkuk, exactly from that text. When one of my friends preached from him as a young fellow, and he explained the sovereignty of God and said, even if things are going tough, I cannot turn my back against God. God is my God, and will make everything right. And he cited that text of scripture. Now, Habakkuk, in a similar sense, is speaking about the fact that although all these judgments are coming on the nation of Judah, God is still sovereign. In fact, look at how he ends the last chapter there. It says, the sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. The book ends at a victorious note of confession, also an admission that God is sovereign. And everything else that you will do it right. The last of this book, the last statement of this book is an inscription. It says, for the director of music on my stringed instruments. What does it remind you of? Sound. So Habakkuk at least went through a dark place of doubt, but from there he got understanding of the greatness and sovereignty of God. So here's a statement of trust by the prophet amid the promise of God's victory and salvation. And it begins and ends with notices that are a reminder of the Psalms. And here he directly addresses God in verses 8, 12 through to 15. Verse 13 is actually the heart of the passage with the promise of salvation. Verse 13 says, you came out to deliver your people, to save your anointed one. You crushed the leader of the land of wickedness. You stripped him from head to foot. Okay. That's Habakkuk. Let's see if we can move to another text. Let me just stop the share and find the next text that we need to look at. Okay. Maybe we can pause for a minute just so that we can wait for Michael has gone out. I know he records and normally he would go and review the lecture back home, but let's wait for him.
We also saw Habakkuk. He also saw, I don't know if not messianic, but he also saw, I think somewhere in the middle of the book, where he says the kingdom of God will cover the earth even as the waters cover the seas.
2:14.
Yeah, so he also saw that despite of what was going on, like he was lamenting and complaining to God, but despite of the circumstances, he foresaw that the kingdom God's kingdom was still going to come somehow on the earth.
Exactly. So that's Habakkuk 2:14 says, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. Yeah. Excellent stuff. Yeah. Is Daniel there? Is Eric there?
Yes, look around.
Okay, Eric. Chesley, you're not speaking to us anymore.
I don't. Sorry, not for that.
Are we quarreled? When people quarrel, they stop talking to each other.
No quarreling here.
Okay. Praise the Lord. I'm happy for that. I would like us to move on to another prophet. You probably know him. Let me get to know this gentleman. I'll use this one. Okay. Michael is back. Looking at Jeremiah. How many have seen a bullfrog? How it looks like? You've seen one, eh? Plenty of them around here. Of course. And how do you best kill a bullfrog? Yeah? You have no idea. Okay. Otherwise, you will arrest you if you kill a bullfrog in Cape Town. It has got more rights than. It is a protected species as well in many places. And Jeremiah was not a bullfrog either. The bullfrog, they say the way you kill a bullfrog best is to put it in water that's cold and slowly begin boiling it.
Oh, I didn't see. I think Ramaphosa said that, eh? Yeah.
Well, and others have said it, begin boiling it, and it won't notice the difference in the heat, except that it will die in the end because it will be too hot to do anything. Okay. Let's come to Jeremiah, an incredible prophet as he was. Let's look at his background. And I'll just run through this very quickly so that we can. And last semester, I think, I gave a reading quiz on Jeremiah, and I'm glad we did it then because it kind of prepares us for what we're going to be talking about tonight. First, we look at the international events that are mentioned in this. Ashurbanipal of Assyria dies, and he died in 631 BC, which brought about revolts in the empire of Assyria. Assyria was really crumbling, and Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon declared independence. He says, "Look, I'm not going to be part of this empire," and he went to develop the Babylonian empire, as it were. And with the help of the Medes, the Assyrians were defeated at Nineveh in 612 through to 618 BC, 611 BC rather. The Assyrian king fled and established a hold on Hebron. Hebron was taken in 610 BC by the Babylonians who were rising. Now Egypt moves to engage with Assyria against Babylon at Kekemosh, and Egypt is defeated in 605 BC. Is defeated. Nebuchadnezzar, the son of Nebuchadnezzar, he claims all the land of the Hittites after 605 BC, and is motivated to continue to go and find more lands to conquer. And obviously the eyes are on Israel, which was in the middle of trade there. Some background was what happened in the background of the nation of Judah. Israel, of course, went into captivity. Who took Israel into captivity? Do you remember, guys?
Babylon.
Yeah?
Assyria.
It's Assyria, not Babylon. The Assyrians took Israel into captivity, and they made sure they routed and deported all that they could, scattered the people of Israel from the land. But Judah was spared because Judah had a longer stay in the promised land by about 135 years before Judah fell captive to Babylon. Manasseh had a long reign for 50 years, but this was an evil king. Evil king, and he disobeyed God, worshipped demons, gave human sacrifice, name it. It was 50 years of incredible leadership. And during the 50 years, Manasseh submitted and served Assyria. Amon, his son, was assassinated by an anti-Assyrian movement in Judah. Some are saying, look, we can't continue living like this in wickedness. And when Amon went there, he was assassinated. But then there was Ammon's son, who was by the name of Josiah, only aged eight. And during that time, in the 12th year of his reign, Josiah began to reform the nation of Judah. He paid Judah of cows, which also began to establish political independence from Assyria. So 5 years into his reforms, as he was seeking to re-establish the kingdom of David, the book of the law was discovered and became the model for reforms. Imagine, the Israelites were meant to be people of the book. The king was meant to be leading the nation of Israel according to God's laws, as God's servant. But now the kings, the priests, had even lost the book to read from the laws of God. So in the process of reform, they found the book of the law in the temple where it was lost, and they read it to Josiah, and that made Josiah drive reform at even a more proactive, more aggressive level to return the kingdom of Judah back to the Lord. And there was a war between Egypt and Assyria, and Josiah decided, let me go and fight with Egypt so that we can defeat Assyria. And in the process, Josiah died. If he had listened to the warning not to join an alliance with Egypt, he probably would have survived. But he had an alliance with Egypt, and from that, he was trying to prevent Necho from helping Assyria at Carchemish, but there he was put to death by Necho at a place called Megiddo. Jehoahaz, that was Josiah's second son, was made king. But he wasn't as righteous as his father. You will see as you read the book of Kings. And after losing to Babylon, Necho returned to Jerusalem and removed him from the throne after sacking the city. And he had the guts even to replace this son, this king, by his older brother Joachim on the throne, but virtually this guy was the puppet of Egypt. Joachim, this king was the one with whom Jeremiah had the most of his disputes. He switched allegiance to Babylon in 602 BC, but he didn't continue with his tributes. And the land was invaded by the Babylonians, and Joachim relented. In 578 BC, the king again refused to pay tribute, thinking that the disharmony between him and Babylon, in Babylon, made the disharmony that was in Babylon was going to make the Babylonian kingdom weaker. But Babylon came and besieged Jerusalem, and this resulted in the first wave of exile that were moved from Judah to Babylonian captivity. So the most prominent citizens, the most educated, the wealthiest of Judah were taken away to Babylon. And amongst those were the likes of Daniel, Meshach, and Abednego, taken as captives. Those were the most intelligent minds, the most godly, the most well-read. And when we read the book of Daniel, we get a glimpse into the sort of person that Daniel was. A man of integrity, and his colleagues as well, people who feared God, and did not contaminate them. So they were actually a remnant. In a cesspool of corruption and stuff, God still had his people who are following the ways of God. And I would imagine that Daniel might have heard some of the prophecies and the messages or some of the sermons that Jeremiah preached before he was taken as a captive into Babylon. And later, when he's seeking the face of the Lord, those prophecies came back. And he counts the years and he says it is 70 years. This is the end. This is what Jeremiah prophesied. You will see that connection when you look into the book of Daniel, talked about there. Joachim was replaced by Joachim, who was taken into exile. And the following years after the siege were really confusing and very troublesome years for Judah. It was a declining country, a declining economy, a declining spirituality, as it were. So at this time, Joachim had split loyalty between being pro-Babylonian and pro-Egyptian. And Judah was actually also split. There were those who were saying, let's go to Egypt. But God had told the Israelites never to go to Egypt. And of course, the Assyrians had come from the north, and now the Babylonians are coming from the north. And some other people are saying, let's go with the superpowers. Sometimes I tend to think about our African situation. When the West comes, they want to give us what we can do, the economies. And most African countries are hugely indebted to international banking corporations and finances as well. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, you know about it. And these guys, they dictate austerity measures in most of these countries. And then China comes up. And China is also saying, we'll give you free. And so our countries are split between the East and the West. And each time I hear people talking about this, I say, it's not the first time a thing like this is happening. It happened elsewhere. Look at these guys here. There were those that were pro-Egyptian and those that were pro-Babylonian. Jeremiah was caught in between because he advised the people not to revolt against Babylon. Wow. Would you believe it? He was saying the will of God is submit to Babylon. That's what Jeremiah was telling. And they couldn't listen. Another king was put in there, Zedekiah. He was another son of Josiah and was made king or governor by the Babylonians after Joachim was taken into exile. In 588, though the Babylonians had weakened significantly, he revolted in paying his tribute. And the moment you don't do that, you're in trouble with a master. So the Babylonian army moved into Judah and seized Judah and Jerusalem. In 1.5 years, they besieged it for 1.5 years, and eventually Jerusalem fell. When the city fell, the temple was destroyed. Zedekiah was blinded after witnessing the death of his two sons. And prior to being taken into exile, he went into exile as a blind person. And therefore Judah became a province of Babylon.
He was blinded because they tried to escape.
He tried to escape by the southern road, and he was arrested. And before he was blinded, they made sure that he saw his sons being killed. Sure. And that happened. Right, we've looked at the background of Assyria, the background of Israel, the background of Babylon, the background of Judah, up to the captivity. And that's the context in which Jeremiah was called. In fact, before those things happened, Jeremiah was called a few decades before that. Let's look at the call of Jeremiah, the prophet. This call could have come somewhere around 626 BC. This was during the time when the righteous Josiah at least was king there. There was some measure of hope, but God called him. Now, Jeremiah was impressed with the profound awareness of the importance of his mission. He knew his mission was a great mission, just like Isaiah also knew that his mission was great. But he also had an inkling, because Isaiah was told to be speaking to them, but they will be never hearing and never coming to understanding. He had a prolonged ministry as well, and Jeremiah as well had a prolonged ministry. 40 years of ministry. I want us to see something here, and I'll let him develop to close it slowly. Like Moses, Jeremiah is not comfortable with the burden that he was given by the Lord. He wanted not to do it. In fact, Jeremiah's mission was described in 4 terms. 1, to tear down, and 2, to build up. When you look at Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 9, look at these words. The Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I've put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Wow. But you see, what's happening here is similar to what Moses was told. I'll give you my words, you go and speak to them. Deuteronomy 18:18. And that was a mission that Jeremiah was being called. So we continue with this God program. Yeah, and soon after his call, he had 2 visions that followed his call. 2 visions. The first was an almond vine, and the word that he was given is that, look, that thing will grow again. I'll give you my word, and my word will grow. The other one was a boiling pot, whose contents was spilling over from the north. And God says, I'll bring judgment from the northern kingdom. Right, so there was an expectation in Jeremiah's mind that the judgment was going to come upon Judah. So what's the point of being called if judgment is coming in any case?
Hope.
Hope. Hope. But look at this. Jeremiah is commanded by God that he is never to marry. He was to remain celibate. Now, we remember Hosea's marriage and his singleness had a prophetic purpose in the case of Jeremiah. But Hosea also, there was a message involved. Go and marry a prostitute. But Jeremiah was just told, don't even marry. Because when you marry, your children are going to die, they're going to have sicknesses, and they're going to become slaves, and you won't like it. So don't marry. Would you believe it? How does it feel to be a bearer of good news? Great. But how does it feel to be a bearer of bad news? Jeremiah was in a difficult space. And if you look at 16, Jeremiah 16, verses 1 to 13, you see how Jeremiah is like, don't marry. One of the things that people look forward to getting married, except, at least at one time, everybody looks forward to getting married. When you do get married, you quickly realize that it's a good institution. Also, it's an institution of responsibilities. And some people, when they discover their responsibilities, they want to jump out. Okay. But generally, there's an expectation of getting married. And Jeremiah was told, don't even entertain it. Ish. Now, Jeremiah lived to see the consequences of his preaching. Consequences of his preaching. It was life in danger. He's charged with blasphemy for predicting the destruction of the temple in chapter 26, verse 1 and verse 6. This is blasphemy. The guy said, no way. God is in the temple. There's no way that our God can be defeated by anyone. Jeremiah said, it will be destroyed. And they want to fight it. For sure, the priest had to beat Jeremiah and put him in stocks because of the message that he preached. Maybe this one is interesting. I know a lot of us have romanticized the call to ministry, and we think that when you come into ministry to be easy all the time. God bless you if it is that way. But one thing must be remembered, that there's a thing called opposition in ministry. Sometimes opposition is so bad and so great. Let me read this text and then perhaps I will stop here and then we can pick up from here next week. When the priest Pasha, son of Immer, the official in charge of the temple of the Lord, heard Jeremiah prophesying these things, he had Jeremiah, the prophet, beaten and put in the stocks at the upper gate of Benjamin at the Lord's temple. The next day when Pasha released him from the stocks, Jeremiah said to him, the Lord's name for you is not Pasha, but terror on every side. Terror on every side. For this is what the Lord says, I'll make you a terror to yourself and to all your friends. With your own eyes you will see them fall by the sword of their enemies. I'll give all Judah into the hands of the king of Babylon, who will carry them away to Babylon or put them to the sword. I'll deliver all the wealth of this city into the hands of their enemies, all its products, all its valuables, and all the treasures of the kings of Judah. They will take it away as plunder and carry it off to Babylon. And you, Pasha, and all who live in your house will go into exile to Babylon. There you will die and be buried, you and all your friends to whom you have prophesied lies. Hey, this was tough, eh? Let's stop here.